Today, the message coming out of Santa Clara hits different. Fred Warner is coming back, the defense gets its soul back, and there is even a rumor about an offensive weapon who could shake up the NFC. But it does not stop there. There is noise around Aiyuk, there is real pressure on Renardo Green, and all of it ties into a title window that is not waiting on anybody. Drop a like and stay with me because today's news has nerve, pressure, and red and gold heart. Fred Warner's return goes way past a medical update. For the 49ers, it feels like the identity of the defense is walking back into the middle of the field. When a player dislocates and fractures his right ankle in Week 6, misses the rest of the season, watches the team fight through it without him, and then comes back saying he feels blessed, grateful, unrestricted, ready to jump back in. We are not talking about just another linebacker getting healthy. We are talking about a pillar returning to the exact spot where everything makes more sense. And that shakes the whole locker room. Fred Warner has always been more than the numbers, even though the resume alone screams it. 4 first-team All-Pro selections, 4 Pro Bowls, 8 seasons of serious respect, and before that hit last year, he had put up at least 118 tackles every season, barely missing games in his entire career. That is not normal. That is elite standard. That is the kind of consistency that forces every young player next to him to understand one thing. The level here is not negotiable. That is why Raheem Morris's words carry weight. When he says he does not know if he has ever seen anyone with Fred's juice, with that attitude, that good morning energy, that mentality to win every single day, that is not empty press conference praise. Morris has been around giants. He mentioned Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, Derek Brooks, John Lynch, Rondé Barber, and even with all that history, he put Warner's consistency in a rare place since arriving in Santa Clara. That is where the season starts to feel different. The 49ers won 12 games, reached the playoffs, and even won a postseason game with the defense beaten up by injuries. Now picture that same group with Warner healthy, Nick Bosa bringing impact back up front, Dre Greenlaw raising the speed of the second level, and young players like Jaden Duggar learning every day from veterans who do not preach the standard, they live it. To me, this is the kind of return that changes the heartbeat of a defense. Warner does not need a long speech. He shows up, practices, runs to the ball, communicates, corrects, demands, and the whole building feels it. If the 49ers want to look like a defense that scares people again, the first step is simple. Number 54 has to be in the middle of the chaos, healthy, loud, and running the whole thing again. Hold this image in your head for a second. Alvin Kamara in San Francisco. Not as Christian McCaffrey's replacement, not as some desperate backup plan, as a luxury piece inside Kyle Shanahan's offense. That is the part that grabs the fan base by the collar. Certain possibilities may start small, but they still force the entire NFC to look twice. The situation in New Orleans has become way too interesting to ignore. Kamara is entering the final year of his contract. He returned to Saints OTAs, and his side has indicated the plan is for him to play there in 2026. But football does not run on public intentions alone. When a 30-year-old veteran with an injury history enters a decisive contract year, and the team also adds Travis Etienne to the backfield, the natural read is to ask how far the Saints really want to stretch this era. On the 49ers side, the fit is almost cruel for defenses. McCaffrey is still the absolute star, nobody is debating that. But because he matters so much, San Francisco has to think about ways to protect his body, split up the hits, keep the offense explosive, and avoid turning every Sunday into a survival test for the most valuable player in the system. Behind him right now you have Jordan James, Kalen Black, and Isaac Guerendo. Those names have value, youth, potential. Kamara would bring a different layer, experience, receiving ability, spatial awareness, and the power to turn a short pass into a major problem. Picture Shanahan with McCaffrey and Kamara in the same package. One motions out, the other stays next to Brock Purdy. The defense shows nickel, run it inside. A heavier linebacker is on the field, isolate him in the passing game. The safety drops down, attack the empty space. Suddenly, before the ball even leaves Purdy's hand, the defensive coordinator is already choosing which poison he wants to drink. For the Saints, a trade would only gain real traction if the franchise starts looking harder toward the future. For the 49ers, the logic would be aggressive and simple. If Kamara becomes reachable at some point, he would not need to carry the offense. He would arrive to multiply problems. And when a contender can turn depth into a real threat, that stops being a pretty luxury on paper. It becomes a message. It becomes a January move. It becomes the kind of swing that says, we are not here to survive the NFC, we are here to kick the door open. Then comes the kind of topic no 49ers fan can treat casually. Brandon Aiyuk and all this noise coming out of Washington. Normal off-season debate is one thing. A player posting stories in a Commander's hat, then dropping a football picture with that "stop the cap, the gig is up" message, and watching the whole internet try to turn it into a final ruling on his future? That is something else. I am saying this as a defender of the Niners. San Francisco cannot become hostage to posts, captions, or timeline interpretation. Aiyuk might be sending a message. He might be poking the organization. He might be trying to create pressure. He might simply be feeding a climate that has existed for a while. But the team that controls the contract, the roster, and the trade value is not the noise from the DMV. It is the 49ers. That is where Fred Smoot's point about defense, even from a different context, fits this situation perfectly. He said a good defense makes the offense adapt, not the other way around. Bring that same logic to the front office. A strong organization does not move to the rhythm other people try to force on it. It sets the price, understands the timing, measures the locker room impact, and decides whether moving a talent like Aiyuk makes sense or whether the strongest move is simply waiting. The Commander's angle treats his desire for Washington like it is obvious, almost inevitable. Inevitable for who? For a rival fan base starving for an elite receiver, sure. For San Francisco, the equation is tougher. Aiyuk is still a high-level player, and giving away that kind of piece for just any compensation because the drama got loud would be a posture loss. If the Niners decide to listen to offers, do it cold. If they decide to sit tight until August 31 trying to squeeze out value, that is part of the game too. What they cannot do is buy into the idea that a string of stories forces the franchise to bow its head. The fan base can be irritated, tired, split, and I get it. But answer this honestly in the comments. Would you move Aiyuk for a low pick just to end the drama? Or would you hold until somebody pays something that respects his talent? To me, this story still has more smoke than substance. But smoke is still annoying. And in Santa Clara, nobody can pretend it is not coming through the window. Renardo Green is the kind of storyline that does not scream like a star rumor, but it can decide a lot once the season gets tight. A cornerback in this 49ers defense does not live in a protected zone. He lives in the spotlight. He lives with quarterbacks hunting matchups, offensive coordinators testing patience, and fans remembering every third down he gives up. And for a player picked late in the second round, entering a year that could shape his future in San Francisco, the margin is getting thinner. Green is not lost, but he is not comfortable either. After his rookie year, the feeling was pretty positive. There was aggression, flashes, competitiveness. Then the second year brought more bumps, and now the team has brought veterans into the building to push that competition. That changes the environment. It is not just, let's see if he grows. It is, grow because somebody is waiting on your spot. The historical comparisons show that exact middle ground. Since 2012, looking at cornerbacks drafted between picks 40 and 90 who played more than 1,000 snaps in their first 2 seasons, Green lands as a pretty average case in approximate value. And average can turn into a lot of different things. It can turn into Jalen Johnson, who did not become an All-Pro until year 4. It can turn into James Bradbury, who reached that level even later. It can turn into a dependable starter, like Dante Jackson, Carlton Davis, Paulson Adebo, Tremaine Johnson. But it can also slide into that group that loses ground quickly after 2 seasons, like Dwayne Gratz, Jonathan Banks, Greedy Williams, Trayvon Mullen, and other names who could not hold the job. That is why I do not buy the panic or the endless patience. Reality sits in the middle, and the middle is uncomfortable. There is a small chance of a massive leap, a real chance he becomes a quality starter, a chance he ends up as useful depth, and an equally real chance he starts fading if 2026 goes badly. For a contender, that matters. The 49ers are not developing players in a consequence-free lab. They are trying to win right now. So Renardo Green's year has to be cleaner, sturdier, more reliable. He does not need to become an All-Pro in September. He has to show he can survive when the offense chooses to attack him. He has to turn talent into repetition, repetition into trust, trust into decisive snaps. Because on a defense getting Fred Warner back and trying to recover its edge, the corner on the other side cannot be an invitation. He has to be an answer. I am standing on one simple point. The 49ers cannot act like a team waiting for permission to be great. Warner coming back changes the blood of the defense. Kamara, if that path ever becomes real, deserves a phone call. Aiyuk cannot control the franchise through posts. Renardo Green has to answer on the field, because a title window is not a waiting room. This roster still looks like a real fight in the NFC, but only if Santa Clara stays aggressive, clear-eyed, and impatient with mediocrity. If you also believe this team has to attack 2026 like a contender, subscribe to the channel and stay locked in.